American social media addicts flocked to the questionable Chinese app XiaoHongShu, otherwise known as Little Red Book. Calling it RedNote is inaccurate. The correct name is, in fact, Little Red Book, which is a clear reference to Chairman Mao's Little Red Book. So they all started flocking over there as the TikTok ban was drawing near its time to take effect. These self-proclaimed TikTok refugees began creating Little Red Book profiles by the tens of thousands. The funny thing is, with the Trump administration now in office, President Trump has vowed to, quote-unquote, save TikTok.
And as of today, TikTok is back.
So the TikTok refugees will soon lose their refugee status, or how does that work? Gotta admit, as cringy as the whole thing sounds, it's actually kind of funny. Well, one thing that I keep hearing about is how shocked these new Little Red Book users are after interacting with Chinese mainlanders on the app and seeing what China is really like, and then realizing that they have been lied to all of these years about China. Now I can see why the US government doesn't want us to see China, is a common sentiment. We've been lied to about China. Their lives are amazing and ours suck, is yet another. We're getting screwed in the US, and now we realize it. You really messed up this time, US government, because now we've seen the real China and your TikTok ban has backfired. Look, I could go on. I'm sure you've all heard much of the same. This sudden realization and enlightenment is often accompanied by an American with a flabbergasted expression on their face and eyes slowly welling up with tears as they realize how they've been hoodwinked by their very own government. So, as a guy from a lower middle class family in the US who has spent over a decade in China and traveled to over 100 cities here, what's my reaction to this whole debacle? Well, I'm going to share that with you all in this video, but I first ask that you do one simple thing in order to help spread this video's reach. Click that like button, show it some love. That will help a lot, so thanks in advance. First of all, I think it's cool that Americans and Chinese mainlanders are finally able to interact a bit. Of course, the main reason that we haven't really been able to in the past is due to China's ban on virtually all Western apps. Instagram, Twitter, /X, Snapchat, YouTube, etc., you name it. It's blocked in China. Even TikTok, a Chinese app, is blocked in China. Now sure, they have an equivalent called Douyin. It's got the same owners, but it is limited to Chinese nationals, and the algorithm is vastly different to the international version, which we all know as TikTok. So now, after all this time, there's a small window that will certainly be short-lived where the Chinese are able to interact with US citizens in a somewhat open and easy way. China's full of cool, interesting people, as is the US, and for them to get to interact is really a special moment. As we speak, Little Red Book is working to separate international users from mainland Chinese users so they won't be able to interact. So this short period of direct communication will be just that, very short-lived, so enjoy it while it lasts. Hey guys, 你们想学中文吗? Do you know what I just said there? I just asked you if you want to study Chinese in Chinese. I personally think you should, and here's why. There are Chinese people all over the world, so your chances to use it are limitless. It could also open up new opportunities for you in life. I have partnered with the amazing team at Excel Mandarin, and I encourage you to go check them out. If you want to learn Chinese, you need to start practicing now. People say it's the hardest language, but do not let that intimidate you. Learning Chinese is super fun, and once you start learning, it just becomes a fun hobby. I learned Chinese on the streets of China, fumbling my way around, and never started with a good, solid foundation. So I had to go back and try to correct all of my old bad habits later on. With Excel Mandarin, they'll take you from zero to conversational in just 10 months or less, and you'll learn from native speakers, so you will learn everything correctly the first time. They have a variety of courses, small class sizes, 24/7 support, friendly, enthusiastic teachers, and a comprehensive website and curriculum that will have everything you need to become a Chinese speaker. They even let you try one class for free. So come on, break out of your comfort zone and give it a shot. You'll thank me later. Please go check them out today. You can contact them by phone or email. Links below. And oh yeah, I almost forgot the most important part. Be sure and tell them Mr. Chopsticks sent you. People in the US are getting a glimpse of China for what I'm assuming is the first time. Only, for the most part, what they are seeing is not generally representative of China. Little Red Book is predominantly female user based, and most of these users are based in China's Tier 1 cities, which, in other words, are China's nicest cities. Think Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing, etc. Furthermore, Little Red Book is a lifestyle app that focuses primarily on the upper middle class up through the fairly wealthy demographic of Chinese society. So think of Instagram, but a lot more show offy. Hey, look at my new designer bag. Look at my new car. Look at my fancy apartment. Look at me. I'm on vacation. Hey, look at this amazing meal. Basically, just a lot of posts of people showing themselves living their best lives. As it is with Instagram in the free world, so it is with Little Red Book in China. This is not representative of reality. That said, as a person who is well traveled in China, it is full of cities that you've never heard of that are modern and impressive with ever improving infrastructure. They have a great high speed rail network that connects the country. They have modern airports all over the country. All major cities have subway networks. China has improved by leaps, bounds, and strides over the past few decades. But what you are seeing on Little Red Book is not what you generally see in real life. And at best, it's just a small piece of the puzzle that is the real China. Let's talk about the things that seem to be causing this meltdown amongst these disgruntled American TikTok refugees. Healthcare. People are shocked by the comparatively low cost of medical care in China. I'm not going to lie. The healthcare system in the US is sickeningly expensive, and something really needs to be done about it. Something's got to change. The quality of care in the US is really good, but the price is just absurdly expensive. In China, it's definitely much less expensive, but a few things to keep in mind. Chinese folks, on average, earn a small fraction of what US workers earn. The other thing is the quality of healthcare. I've had issues in China where I had a health issue, but the staff was not able to determine what was wrong. One time I had bronchitis, and I was told by a doctor who was smoking a cigarette in his office that I'm actually fine and that I just need to drink more hot water and everything will be okay. I shit you not. Another time I got an ear infection from what was supposed to be an ear cleaning in China. A bad infection developed in my ear, and Chinese ENT doctors were not able to figure out what was wrong after several visits to several different specialists. Luckily, I had a trip home to the US during this time, and while they had not seen this particular infection before, they said it looked like a spider web had developed inside of my ear. They were able to give me medicine that treated it effectively on my very first visit. Within just a few days, it was cleared up. I have a lot more stories I could share, but I'll stick with these for now. Also, in China, you have to pay for medical care up front. If you can't pay it, you're not getting medical treatment. End of story. Some families can't afford the treatment they need, and so they don't get it. Now, I'm not knocking China at all here. They have a huge population that they need to take care of, and I know that they try their best. Another major point of meltdown includes the price of groceries and goods. This is another key point that keeps coming up. For me personally, things are quite cheap in China. When I go to the supermarket and load up on veggies, fruits, bread, meat, etc., the cost is definitely significantly lower here in China than what I'd pay in the US. No doubt about it. But again, you have to keep in mind the discrepancy in what the average Chinese worker earns compared to what the average American worker earns. In China, salaries vary a lot. On the extremely low end, millions around China only earn around $140 per month, most of these being people in rural areas. In cities, salaries range from about $500 a month for a full time worker who often works 6 to 7 days a week, up to around $1,500 or even $2,000 per month on the higher ends among the median wages. For your very average Chinese worker, the average salary is going to range somewhere around 500 to 1,000 US dollars per month. In the US, the average salary is many multiples higher than that. So we'd be remiss to not keep this in mind while discussing this issue. Another thing that I found interesting is that some things in China are just as expensive as they are back home. American fast food chains in China are often nearly as expensive as they are back home. In general, it's a little bit cheaper here in China, but not much. Also, major brands like Columbia, Nike, Adidas, etc., are just as expensive here in China as they are back home, and sometimes even more expensive. When you're in the US, if you live near any kind of outlet mall with major brands, if you go there, you'll often see Chinese tourists loading up on purses, handbags, clothing, shoes, and other things to take back to China because they are getting these things cheaper in the US than they could in China. Also, many electronics are just as expensive in China as they are in the US. Laptops, cell phones. And keep in mind the discrepancy in the salary of the average worker in China compared to their US counterparts. Those were the main things that seemed to cause the meltdown among the TikTok refugees. And the more they commented and posted about it, the more the Chinese influencers would talk about the cheap prices of groceries, give them tours of a supermarket, show them the nicest sides of life in China, discuss the difference in affordability of healthcare in China versus the US, and so on. They noticed that US viewers were in shock of this and that their opinion of China had changed and their disdain toward their home country of the US increased. Chinese influencers seemed to really double down on feeding this kind of content to US viewers, which I guess is okay. But they always seem to leave out the necessary context and avoid talking about some of the issues that average folks in China face. Average folks in China have a lot of pressure. They have to work long hours. You'll read about a 996 work culture, which is true in some cases. But from what I've seen the most, something like an 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. workday, 6 days a week for most Chinese employees. They work long hours, and in general, they don't earn that much money. Also, something else we have to take a look at in terms of overall pressure and affordability is the cost of housing. In the US, property prices are about a 3 to 1 ratio on average, meaning that it would take around 3 years of a worker's salary to pay for the home. In China, property prices are at around a 30 to 1 ratio, meaning that for your average Chinese worker to afford a home, it would take around 30 years worth of 100% of his or her salary to pay off the home. That's a brutal amount of pressure on the Chinese, especially Chinese men. Also, in Chinese society, there's already a massive gender imbalance, and women realize this and know they have a lot of leverage and can demand more for their hand in marriage. If a Chinese man wants to marry a woman, he needs to have a nice car and a house. Without that, most women wouldn't consider him for marriage. People in China tend to marry relatively young as well, so think about that. A young guy in his 20s who probably has a job that doesn't pay very well, he still needs to have a car and a house in order for almost any woman to consider being with him. On top of that, there's a dowry or bride price as well. If the man wishes to marry the woman, he needs to pay her a large sum of money before the wedding. This figure can reach into the tens of thousands of dollars. This amount of pressure, just in order to find a partner, is already more than most Americans would be able to endure. Then you have to take into account that it's getting harder for most Chinese workers to get good jobs. Unemployment figures are opaque, but you know the problem is bad when they choose to just stop reporting unemployment figures until a method can be found to make them look a bit more palatable. Nowadays in China, a lot of well educated university graduates are having to turn to food delivery and Uber driving, well, the Chinese equivalent called Didi, in order to make a few bucks. This only compounds the pressure facing young Chinese. It is from this pressure that movements like laying flat and let it rot stemmed from. I feel for them. They have such a huge amount of pressure, and I know it's not easy. Nothing but respect and well wishes for all of my Chinese brothers and sisters. Chinese people work hard. They accept their circumstances and they just work and work and work. And I don't often hear them complain about it either, which is impressive. I have nothing but respect for their work ethic and attitudes toward work. China is a fun place to explore and a really interesting country. But please don't get reality twisted by seeing a skewed, warped, carefully crafted version of a fake reality on social media. China, like any other country, has its own issues. Don't think for 1 minute that they don't have pressure here in China, because they do. In fact, the amount of pressure they face would break most Americans. I already talked to you about property prices here. Well, just take the life of a Chinese student who goes to school early in the morning and often doesn't get home until 10 at night. Do you think you could have done that for years on end when you were 15 years old? I doubt it. I know I couldn't have. That's what they do here. They work hard as hell. They struggle. They have pressure. They study their asses off. It's not an easy existence by any means. I hope this video has helped you to understand China just a little bit better and hopefully give some of these overly upset and emotional and highly impressionable TikTok refugees a more well-rounded sense of perspective as well. If you'd like to see more of China and learn more about this fascinating place, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my channel. To those who have already subbed, and especially to those of you who have contributed to my efforts via super thanks right here on YouTube, or made a contribution on buymeacoffee.com, or who have become a member either here or on Patreon, I want to give you all an extra special thank you. Your support means a lot. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this video. We'll catch you all in the next one. 下次再见. I want to give an extra special thanks to all of my YouTube members and Patreon supporters for their help in keeping this channel financially sustainable. Thanks to all of my grasshoppers and tigers, and an extra special thanks to my Pichio gang. And lastly, a huge shout out to my top tier supporters, Lee, Martin S., and David is Dawei. I see you guys, and I just want to let you know I appreciate it so much. Oh, and just so you know, you guys rock.
What do you look for beyond the sea, grasshopper?